Pistons expert, the stats guy, and we've been having Siddy on the program for the last couple of years, and it's always insightful when we have him on and we talk basketball and specifically the Pistons. And haven't had him on since before the season began, and here we are now. We promised we'd bring him back around the halfway point, and that's exactly where we're at. Pistons sitting now at, I believe, 12-37. On pace for probably another high teens, low 20s win season. Dwayne Casey taking a lot of abuse on Twitter every night as the Pistons get blown out. It seems like routinely.
150 points last night. Oh my God.
Bob Page made a joke on Twitter. He said, "Hey, all those folks who said that the Pistons would hold Milwaukee under 155, you win."
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a rough season, no question about it. Kate Cunningham being injured and so on. But we'll get into all that with Siddy. Siddy, thanks for being here, and you're on video today. Good to see you.
Thanks, Greg. Hi, Al. Thanks for having me. First thing, you mentioned we are exactly at the halfway point, and that I'm going to argue with you on that and say we are at the 9/16 post of the season. And so, when you think about it, though, 9/16 often overlooked, a hardworking fraction, and the sits halfway between 1/2 and 5/8, and everybody overlooks 9/16. So I'd like to give a shout out.
Guru for a reason, right?
Well, that's I can't wait. I don't know that I can make it to the other 7/16 of the season. By the way, I don't know if I can do it. Well, be that as it may, Pistons are 12-30. I know they're 12-37. That much I do know. They're 12-37, and we are recording this program the night after the debacle against the Bucks. Nobody figured the Pistons would win that game necessarily, of course, given their being shorthanded and given the fact that Milwaukee is a championship contender and so forth. I believe they've beaten the Pistons, I want to say 16 out of 17 times I read in the paper. So, and indeed, that's exactly what happened. They came out, the Bucks did 28-8 right out of the gate. 49 points in the first quarter. These 49-point quarters, I'm seeing these quarters now in the 40s this year, which takes me back to the days of the 70s. But anyway, the defensive aspect of this City, I know they're young, I know they're not very good, but what do you make of these defensive? These are just these amount of points they're giving. I believe they're 31st out of 32 teams in defensive. I'm not sure if efficiency or proficiency. I think they lead only San Antonio in that regard. 118 points per 100 possessions. What do you make of this?
Well, you are correct about them being next to last. So, by the way, you brought up some stats about last night. I thought it was kind of funny. They had, but one stat I would like to, being an optimist, you forgot one stat, which is that the Pistons outscored the powerful Bucks 106-101 over the last 3 quarters.
Okay.
Is that worth anything?
Nope. Nope. Not when you go 49 and fall behind by 25 in the first quarter.
Well, okay, a few funny stats about, you mentioned it already, but with 8:50 to go in the first quarter, Bogey hit a jumper to cut the lead to 17-6, and that was the closest the Pistons would ever get for the remainder of the night. Then again, with 6:27 remaining in the first quarter, it was 31-8, which makes me wonder if there were any people on Woodward Avenue about to enter the arena who looked at their phone and just said, "Hey, let's go grab lunch or go grab dinner, grab a bite to eat," rather than go in and watch the rest. And finally, Giannis, he had 20 points in 8 minutes and 27 seconds, which put him on pace for 110. He was on Wilt Chamberlain speed last night. So, yeah, it was ugly. The Pistons right now, last year, the Pistons' problem was on offense. Their D was a little bit below average, but this year it has sunk almost to the bottom. Mm-hmm. And the offense has basically remained stagnant. I mean, Bogey's saving the season.
Right.
You subtract him, whoa, what a disaster. The Pistons would be really painful to watch without him.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So he's been performing at the best of his career, But defensively, let me just say one thing I saw last night that I liked.
Okay.
And watching that first quarter and watching Giannis just slice through the defense and dunk and lay the ball up almost uncontested for those 8.5 minutes. And, who was the center at that time? It was Jalen Duren. And then in the third quarter, when he came out again, I was watching him and he started getting physical. He was realizing that he could basically play football with Giannis. So I think that was a good experience. He saw up front what you can do and what it takes and what it looks like. That's the one positive I can come away with in that game is just Jalen Duren's education.
I know I know you're saying, and I appreciate that. And you're right. I'm not going to dispute what you are saying. That is a point well taken. However, as you know, that kind of stuff isn't moving the meter with the fan base that is very restless, very annoyed, very cranky. They're very down on the team right now. They're down on Casey. They're down on Troy Weaver. But they know at the same time that the team is shorthanded. They don't have Cade. Last night they didn't have Killian and so forth. And they understand. I mean, it's not that they don't know that this is a rebuild. It's not like they don't know that, but I think what they're cranky about, and this may be misguided crankiness, frankly, and you'll tell us if it is or not. I don't think that they see, the fan base sees any development, any improvement, anything to really latch onto other than tanking the season and hoping that 14% that you'll get the French kid is going to come through.
Well, before the season started, people were guardedly optimistic.
Right.
I think the over/under in Vegas was 29.5.
Wow.
Which put them as like the best of the young teams, ahead of Oklahoma City,
right.
Orlando and Houston.
Right.
And then, we're seeing what's happened. But if you had known at the beginning of the season, that Cade Cunningham was going to miss the whole year, that was a surefire way to sink to the bottom. There's no way around it, So this is expected based on that fact, But yeah, it is, here's what happened. They went on a West Coast trip where they played really well. They won a couple of games that surprised people. That's when Killian started to show some life. But who was watching those games, playing in Denver and LA and all those cities, right? So right now, in my opinion, I hate to say it, I'm like one of the last people to use these words. I hate the word tank. I hate it.
Right. I don't like it either.
It's misused. It's overused. Yeah. You're allowed to rebuild and develop your young guys. But I'm starting to smell something coming out of Detroit, the way they're playing around with their bigs and their availability each night. And I think something's going on there right now. I think they're kind of pointing the boat even more towards heading south. And I don't think they need to. They can just play normally. They're going to be a bottom 3 or 4 team.
Let's just kind of set the stage for folks who may not know. I mean, the three of us on this call know this, but a lot of people don't know what the draft lottery, what the deal is. So basically what it is that the teams with the 3 worst records in the NBA in the regular season each get essentially a 14% chance of securing the number 1 overall pick. You cannot, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Siddy, if you finish with one of the 3 worst records, you cannot, what's the lowest you can fall in the draft order?
I think it's 4. It could have changed to 5, but I think it's still 4. So.
Okay. So if the Pistons finish among the 3 worst, which they certainly will, we think, the 3 of us think, they won't finish with anything worse than the 4th pick in the overall pick. Now, their chance of getting the French kid, Wembanyama, I think that's how you pronounce his last. I'm not sure. Wembanyama? Wemby? Okay, fine. I always say the French kid. So anyways, the chances of getting him is the same as the other 2 teams have finished with the other 2 worst records. So there's no guarantee, of course. Now, let me ask you this, though. Other than Wemby, certainly he's not the only kid in the draft that's going to move the meter for an NBA team. Who other than he, because he's the one that always gets all the ink, who else is out there that Pistons fans might get excited about if they do indeed not get Wemby?
Yeah, it's kind of early to say. I mean, I just hear I don't even look at these guys until after the season, when it comes to draft time. Scoot Henderson's the one name you keep hearing. He's playing in the G League. But year in and year out, almost there are lots of guys in the draft, and you don't even have to draft high anymore. There isn't an analysis of the Killian Hayes draft, and there is no correlation between where you drafted and the value of the guy you drafted. That's not my evaluation. Someone came up with a method for because guys going in the 20s, Desmond Bain, for instance, Maxey, going 22 or something. And there were a lot of busts in the top 10, so maybe it doesn't matter as much as we think. And it seems to be working. You don't see teams really pointing south like they used to, It seems like teams are playing everything straight up. That's why I was kind of disappointed. I could be wrong, but I think the Pistons are starting to play it that way a little bit, to try and get into that bottom three.
Does the league do they kind of look the other way when that stuff happens? Are there hard and fast guidelines or regulations about sitting players?
I think what happens, most of it's behind closed doors, and we don't know. Probably the league is communicating that they don't want the perception. The league doesn't want the perception that teams aren't trying. Before, there are two things that Adam Silver said this year that were interesting. One was, talking about what is it, regulation, like in soccer, where you send teams down to the next level. Right. And he can't be serious, but just by mentioning it, he was trying to scare people. Because he understood in the same breath. He understood that this year there's a prospect that's kind of like a Lou Alcindor prospect, from 50 years ago. This is a very unusual player.
Right.
But that 1 in 7 odds, I think it's working. Why do you want to throw a season away for 1 in 7?
Right. Yeah.
So look at Oklahoma City. I mean, they only have one guy in their team that was a top 10 pick. And they're playing 500 basketball with their top pick, Holmgren out for the year, So
right. Yeah.
That's true. There's a lot of different formulas for building a team and winning. And to me, that's a little frustrating that Detroit and Troy Weaver came from Oklahoma City, that they're not like developing guys. Look at it this way. Since Troy Weaver arrived, Detroit's basically been the worst team in the league.
Right.
And when you're the worst team and you have 15 roster spots in a G League team and two-way contracts, you have a lot of freedom just to start, playing, whack-a-mole with all these players that are, borderline prospects, and you find guys that way. And I don't see Troy Weaver doing that. He really hasn't found a guy in 2.5 years. The closest you could say it, I think, would be like Isaiah Livers, who was a second-round draft pick. But I'm not seeing him going after those kinds of guys and trying to develop. Miami, again, I've talked about them before. Miami's always finding these guys, and they're cheap, they don't cost anything. And that's how you build your team around your stars. You just can't wait for your high lottery picks. You look around the league. I mean, that's where Minnesota's been for 10 years. It's a slow process, and Detroit's going through it right now.
That's for sure. We're talking with Siddy Hall, our NBA stats guru here on the Knee Jerks. I'm Greg from my WordPress Out of Bounds blog, and Big Al, of course. Al Beaton is here from the Beaton world. And actually, he's here from Florida. Al's back from Florida.
Yeah.
Al, chip in here. What you got for us, Siddy Hall?
Well, Dwayne Casey's been getting. I think their fan base, is running on the Pistons with Dwayne Casey. Because I think a lot of it just has to do with, if there's one market, one fan base that can appreciate defense and effort, it's the Detroit Pistons fan base. Going back decades, this is a franchise known for hard-nosed defense and effort. And there seems to be, and even when I played back in high school, you're always told defense is effort. That's the number one thing about playing defense, is that you have to put in the effort. And when you're giving up the kind of points the Pistons are giving up, where's the defensive effort? And doesn't that start to fall on the head coach, that his message isn't getting through, or he's doing something wrong? And you think we're starting to see the beginning of the end of Dwayne Casey as the Pistons head coach?
Well, you've heard me talk about Dwayne before. I'm a fan. I'm unshakable.
Mm-hmm.
To me, you just stick with the guy. Look, we've been in Detroit too. You know what we're experts at? Musical chairs, a carousel with coaches, with the Joe Dumars era. That was horrific.
Right.
And you get to a point you can't even find a guy. I mean, if you happen to believe in like a young coach out there who's never had a head coaching job, and you think you want to make that bet, you can try it, but be careful. You might end up with Michael Curry.
Yeah.
I like Dwayne Casey. He has I think in his time in Detroit, over and over, we're seeing guys perform well with him. Look at some of those vets like DeLon Wright and Wayne Ellington, and these guys come under his wings and they play well,
But then you talk about veterans. What about the young players? They don't seem to be.
He's known as
that's the issue I'm having with them right now, is that the young players seem to be regressing, like Sadiq Bey.
Yeah, Bay's had a little bit of a tough year, but again, you're talking to a guy. I love Sadiq Bey, and when you like a guy, you just ride with him. You don't change your opinion how a guy's played the last 10 games or 20 games. That's such a short amount. He's already established that he can play. You start worrying. You just check him off. He's a keeper. Don't even worry about it. Don't worry if he goes into a cold streak or something. He's a lock.
Yeah.
What else? Maybe Kate Cunningham's part of the deal. He's, I was talking last year on this show. I love his defense. I love his effort, his versatility, his ability to run around the floor and chase shooters, his ability to guard bigs, and maybe that's part of it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that's playing something into it. Yeah, because when he's supposed to be essentially your tent pole of the franchise, and when you lose your tent pole, everything around him tends to collapse.
Yeah, well, we tend to think of him as offense, but I like
exactly.
defense.
Yeah. What about Bogdanovich? Do you think it's time to get? I know there's the word on the street, if you read the beat writers, that the team really, really likes him. Why else would they have given him actually a fairly team-friendly extension? But his defense is not good, and he adds shooting, but what he gives them in shooting, he tends to get back on his inability to play very good defense. Where do you fall on Bogdanovich? And you think that when the trade deadline is rolling around in about 5 weeks, do you think he'll be a Piston then?
Well, as far as defense, I would consider him just to be kind of a typical defender. He's kind of big and strong. I wouldn't say he's a bad defender.
Yeah.
He's not out there for D. He's out there for his offense, obviously. Of course, life is better when Rudy Gobert is behind you, as it was in Utah, right? But defense it's a team sport. It's hard just to isolate guys. And you look in today's NBA, guys are on an island, and you're always going to find examples of them getting beat. The offenses have the upper hand right now. So you're going to see Bogey get beat sometimes.
Yeah.
But to answer your question about where's he going to be, my feeling is he's going to be traded. I don't know why they would keep him. His value right now is high, and he's playing great basketball. Offensively, he's having his best season. I have him as the 15th leading scorer, which ties him with Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, that's pretty much elite, in other words.
That's elite.
Yeah.
And traditionally, he's a guy who falls between 20 and 30 in his best seasons. But he's a bucket getter. And right now, you look at those standings, man. They're so jam packed in the middle. It's amazing. There are like 13 teams in each conference that are good, and out of those 13, I bet you 10 or 11 think that they are a player away from making the leap into the top group. The top group, there's no dominant team. Look at Miami. I mean, look in the West. You got Phoenix and Golden State are both 500. There are a ton of teams within like 4 games of 500. So that makes Bogey really appetizing, really enticing. If you can get him, you've got a big time scorer in your lineup. So I'm curious to see what Troy Weaver, let's see how he plays poker, because he's got leverage.
It's a seller's market. Would you say the same about Alec Burks? That he's playing very, very well this year. He's another veteran who I think would fit right in with a playoff roster.
Yeah, he could help a lot of teams. He's played well for a year and a half, so that's important. He's got 1 year left. Bogey's got 2 years left on his deal. But Bogey has much more value than Burks. He's on a different level. But it's good that Burks has done it now for a year and a half. That kind of removes doubts, because for like 3 or 4 years, he almost disappeared because of injuries, But I'm curious to see what Bogdanovich can fetch.
Yeah.
To illustrate what Siddy just said, I'm taking a peek at the standings right now. There are in the West. There are 9 teams that are between 2 games over 500 and 3 games under. 9 teams that are that closely bunched together. Even teams like the Lakers, who have been bad, are within 3 games of 500.
They're on the rise.
Siddy mentioned, and Siddy mentioned Phoenix and Golden State, who are traditionally way above 500, are now right around 500. So I think he makes a good point when you talk about the trade value of a guy like that. When you've got that many teams, and then when you go to the East, it's kind of not the same thing with the 500 thing. It's more, there's a lot of really good teams. Like you look at any one of them from Boston down to Cleveland that have a really good shot at coming out of the conference. So what do you think would be what would be good value, Siddy, that the Pistons would get back if they did in Detroit? And I know there's different factors in there, like who you're trading him to and so forth. But what would you expect the Pistons? What would make you happy that the Pistons would get back for him?
Well, first-round draft picks are really expensive these days, and it seems like he's at least worth that. Jeremy Grant got Detroit at first. Plus, we had to cough up, eat a contract, Kemba Walker or something. But it's really hard to get a first-round draft pick these days. In a lot of the teams that, unfortunately, a lot of the teams that would like Bogey, maybe they don't have many firsts available, or they're kind of late in the first round. I would want more than a late first rounder for Bogey. I would want, if it were a first rounder, then I also would want a young player. So,
but what about his age? Would his age, even though he's having it, like you said, he's literally statistically having his best season, just like Blake Griffin did a few years ago. But would you be concerned, or would you be concerned? Would a team that would be trading for him be concerned that he turns 34 in April?
Well, they got to cough up. It's a short-term deal. They're looking for a year and a half. That last year on his deal, who knows? But you're trying to win now. You're trying to, how many Bogdanoviches are there? On the market? You can't find guys like him. He's super valuable right now. He's a major go-getter sniper who has just been looking great. I mean, you could put him on any team, they're just going to look at.
Oh, everybody uses it. Sure. I mean, he's shooting 42% from behind the 3-point line and 21 points a game and so forth. Looking at the team right now, I know you being an optimist, what for a jaded, annoyed, cranky fan base, if you were to sit the fan base down as if they were a single person, what would you tell that cranky fan that would make them hopefully feel better about this season and about the future of this team?
Watch the 2 rookies, Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren. They're awesome. Duren last night had his highest scoring game, 23 points. A lot of it was garbage time, But he puts it up every night. And I predict, here's what often happens with rookies. We're getting close to the final quarter of the season, and that's when they start playing like vets. And I think you're going to see some Jaden, is it Jaden or Jalen? Jaden Ivey explosions in the final quarter. I think we're going to see some games out of him. Maybe we're going to see a stretch where he scores 25 a night for 2 weeks, So those guys are, that's the excitement. It's not Killian Hayes. Hayes, it was nice that he improved, but it's the 2 rookies. Those guys are nice, So you put those 2 together with, with Cade and another pick, and it gets interesting, then the 3 guys from the 2020 draft. That's a pretty good collection, but the question is are they going to blossom and become a real force, or is Detroit simply going to be one of these franchises that sort of becomes like a warehouse for developing
Right.
players and then just, giving up and sending them elsewhere. That's always a danger. That's kind of what Orlando went through for a number of years.
I'm glad you brought that up because a couple of weeks ago, when Al and I were together, we were talking about well, I had related to Al a conversation you and I had, Siddy, on Messenger about the Pistons, and you said something to the effect of, the Pistons never seem to have. I'm paraphrasing it. You said they're either too old or too young. It seems like they never have anybody who's that core of players who are in their prime. They had
Right.
one you mentioned in right. You mentioned that they did have one, which was Jeremy Grant, and they traded him. But here we are again. You mentioned that, so I'm bringing that up because you mentioned the warehouse analogy, and so in to Al's point about Saddiq Bey maybe taking a step back, but I would then counter and say, look at Beef Stew has actually stepped up his game. He's so you can kind of so how do you do that? How do you get players? I know you talked, I remember one time about got Golden State, got the Klay Thompsons and the Currys together and so forth, and they all came together at the right time and they all became in their prime at the same time. I know that's not easy to do. I'm not suggesting that it is, but can the Pistons get themselves in a situation where they have a core of players that can all kind of grow together and be really good when they're 24, 25, 26 years old?
Well, that's what they're trying to do. The question is how good are they? Are they good enough to do that?
Right.
Well, basically, yeah, I mean, they don't have any guys in their prime. Right. They traded away 3 guys. When Weaver arrived, he traded away 3 guys that were about to enter their prime, being Bruce Brown, Luke Kennard, and Christian Wood. And he rationalized it like he wanted to the plan was to get everybody on kind of in the same age group, I guess. And
right.
All right, fair enough. So we traded those 3 guys for Killian and Beef Stew and Saddiq Bey. I don't know if that's an improvement or not. It seems like all those guys are kind of on the same level, but it got everybody younger, and then you start sorting through it and figuring out who do you keep. But it is really critical. They got to get some guys that can make a difference. Not just guys that are okay. You look at the Bay and Stuart Killian group, that looks like a support group. It's not that could change, because sometimes once guys get to like 25, 26, that's when they kind of explode. So in a way, hey, there's a silver lining there. All those guys are eligible for a contract extension. This is huge. People aren't talking about this much, but Weaver's been, drafting these guys. They're all on rookie scale contracts. Now he's got a ton of decisions to make.
Right. Sure.
How much to pay them, how much, so those guys are not stars. So hopefully that means he can re-sign them and keep, the cost control in place, keep money free, for Cade and Ivy and whoever they draft this year, and go after people. They're going to have a lot of money available for free agency. They can be players, they can kind of be the dominant player in that free agency this year if they want to, but that carries its own risks.
Yeah, one of your earlier appearances was with us. You made a great point that I have to keep reminding myself of, because as you're talking about, guys don't really explode till they're in the league 5-6 years or so. Is that you mentioned that Steph Curry didn't become quote unquote Steph Curry until about his 6th season in the league. And we're talking about, for the most part, a bunch of guys that have been in the league 1, 2, 3 years. So I know I hate using the word patience, but I have a feeling that's kind of what you're trying to drive home here.
Yes, and this is good. We have a chance, or the Pistons, have a chance to. I'm thinking of Saddiq. Those 3 guys: Killian, Saddiq, and Beef Stew. What can how much they're going to be expensive still? They're not going to be cheap. You look at last year's group of those rookie extensions. DeAndre Hunter of Atlanta got $22.5 million a year for 4 years, and he's not that good. He's kind of if I were Saddiq Bey's agent, I would be pointing at that, and then maybe saying, hey, and the cap's going to go up, so we want more. These guys, Bay could end up I hope to God it's not that much, but if he has a good agent, he can make an argument. Beef Stew, he's probably going to cost 12 or 15 million a year. Killian, I hope it's less. I'm praying, Troy removes the rose-tinted glasses and manages to get him signed for kind of like backup guard salary. But that's going to be huge. That's going to have ramifications on how much money is available for the other rookies the following year, for free agents, and what they can do in the future and try and build that dominant team.
Let me ask you this question. We talk a lot about when we talk about the Lions, for example, there's this whole thing about losing culture, winning culture, losing culture, and Dan Campbell has changed the culture and so forth, so on and so forth. What I'm seeing on Twitter, and this is Twitter, I get it. I'm not saying that's the be all end all, but what I'm seeing a lot on Twitter is the fans, again, part of their crankiness, suggesting that all that's happening here, this is the glass is half empty look. All that's happening here is that the team has a losing culture and that they don't like the body language. They don't like the effort on defense, that they're losers. And Mike, this is kind of an existential question. Is in your mind, culture, the word culture, which can be overused as well, is the word culture important in the NBA in building a team? Is there such a thing as the risk of creating a culture that makes it counter to your efforts to build a winner, or is that an overused term?
Well, no, I mean, you're talking about management, so talking about the president, the owner, the coach, the GM. So my impression is that the players like playing for Dwayne Casey. And if the players like playing for Dwayne Casey and they work hard for him, then problem solved. There is no issue. It's just a perception. It's people want to have something to complain about.
Right.
We had a conversation, remember the Pistons had a horrific loss like a month ago. I forget what happened.
They were up by 14 with 3 minutes to go or something like that.
Yeah, we talked about it on the last podcast.
Was it Brooklyn or who? I can't remember who they played.
Yeah, I think it was Brooklyn, actually.
Yeah. Okay.
The game got away from them. And of course, it created a big reaction. But the team came back. They won a couple of games after that. They just came back. The next game. If they had bad culture, you would have noticed it the next game. But they came. I think they won the next game. They came back, and that's credit to the coach. That's Dwayne Casey. He kept a young team focused. Keeps them on an even keel. And I like what he does. To me, he is not the problem. It's just a matter, we got to get Cade healthy. And I think, Marvin Bagley too. He has made zero Remember last year, the final third of the season, the Pistons were fun and they were competitive. Yeah. That's what created the optimism.
Right.
You had alley-oops going to Bagley, who was dunking nonstop. You had Jeremy Grant. Olynyk was getting healthy. And they were looking like a team,
Sure.
So those guys are gone. All they got is Bogey. It's Bogey and a couple of rookies, and Bay's had a little bit of a tough year, but I'm not worried about Saddiq Bey. And didn't he hit a game winner? Yeah, he hit that game winner. Remember, he hit the.
A couple weeks ago. Yeah, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. In Utah, maybe.
It was on the road. Yeah.
No, it was Golden State.
Golden State. You're right. Yeah,
that's
Golden
right.
State, yeah.
Klay Thompson tied it, and then Saddiq hit the winner.
Right.
I don't think they have a problem with. They got stability. They got the same core guys that have been there for 3 years now. I don't think it's.
But what about Casey? I know you don't know him. None of us have met the man. But what about Casey himself? I mean, he's like 61, 62 years old. I mean, this is like 3 or 4 years now of winning 20, 25 games, tops. What does that do to him? I mean, first of all, his career, if he cares about that kind of stuff, his career winning percentage is taking a big hit since he came to Detroit. But what about him? I mean, as a person, as a coach, I mean, all does it get to him? Do you think? I mean, he wakes up, he's 12-37. Last year they were 23 or 59 or whatever they were. The year before that they won 21 games, whatever. What does this do to him?
And he's 65, by the way. He's
65.
Wow, he's a
he's
young
not a young man anymore. Because I'm catching up with him, honestly.
No, so I'm not. Seriously. I mean, a guy his age. I mean, how much more losing does he want to put up with?
It depends on the person, right? Some people can deal with it. Look at in San Antonio.
Popovich,
Popovich has been losing for a few years. He likes teaching.
Right.
Look, here's what I realized about Dwayne Casey and why, he's a coach, he's a gamer. Why did he come to Detroit? I couldn't understand that. It made no sense to me. Why would he get options, And it's because to a coach, every team is a puzzle. And he likes the Detroit puzzle. His puzzle right now is how to make young guys mature and develop. And that's the puzzle. It's not just wins and losses. That's how we talk about it, but it's a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month process, and about keeping implementing a philosophy with his players. Like last night's game, I was reading his comments. They're great comments. Like, hey, these guys got to figure out it's a 48-minute game. That was my fear. He was afraid about the first quarter. Because Milwaukee, when they led the league in wins 2 years in a row, and then when they won the championship, those 3 years, that they were notorious for just grabbing a team in the first 6 minutes and just sticking them in a vice grip. They did it all the time. So many times you'd look at the score mid-first quarter, Bucks up 20. And so for them, last night was like, oh, that was like the old days. We still got it. Chris Middleton was back. They had their starting lineup back, and they were feeling it. It was the old Bucks, and the Pistons were the unfortunate victim. That's a great team. And, Casey, you could point to things. Hey, we won the last 3 quarters, but it's 48 minutes. You got to figure out how to deal with guys like Giannis.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though, about what you just said about Casey coming to Detroit. He looks at every team and it's a puzzle. But when he came to Detroit, you said, "Gosh, why did he come to Detroit?" When he came to Detroit, their big three was Andre Drummond, Blake Griffin, and Reggie Jackson. And not long after that, they were all gone.
Yeah, apparently that was an interesting puzzle to him. He liked the Griffin Drummond combo or something, So yeah, I guess that's it. When you're just a coach, every team's different. It's not. We project on these guys. Got to get a ring. Got to get a championship. He just wants to coach.
Yeah, and they're wired differently at that level. Those guys, those coaches, oftentimes will coach till they're dead. In other words, so
that's what he does.
Yeah, 65 in a lot of ways is still young for some coaches.
He looks great.
Yeah,
I like his
right
energy.
about that. He does look very good.
I hope he stays. He's got 3 more years at least. So
yeah,
why? Stability is good. That's what teams are looking around. You look at Spoelstra, Miami. It's been like 18 years or something. You don't need to change coaches every time. Seems like there's a problem. It doesn't. It's just like a fake. Fake way of trying to solve something that has deeper issues.
Yeah, but having said that, a lot of even the successful teams, though, Siddy, I notice you mentioned Spoelstra. That's kind of an outlier. Even the successful teams kind of go through. Look how many places Doc Rivers has coached. Doc Rivers has coached how many teams now? 5 or 6.
Yeah,
and they're all good.
Yeah, he sticks around. Yeah, he's at that. Well, that he should be like. That's what Casey should be. Going around to good teams and spending 5 years in each place. And for some reason, he was just willing to try something different. That Doc. Doc left the Clippers. The Clippers just ran out of something. The Paul Griffin. DeAndre Jordan group, it seems like they reached their limit. And I don't know the details there, but Doc felt like he needed a change of scenery. Depends on, everyone's a little different, different management styles, and maybe some styles are more mercurial and those people don't stay as long, and other people are steadier. And I suppose that Dwayne Casey is a little steadier.
We're talking with our NBA stats guru, Siddy Hall. We're wrapping it up here. I'm Greg Eno from my WordPress Out of Bounds blog, and Big Al, of course, is here as well. Sidney, anything else on your mind you want to bring up that we didn't ask you?
Well, I was just, analyzing the stats, running through all the league stats before our podcast, and just analyzing things. Just throw some numbers at you. This is the top, offensive season in the history of the NBA. Just looking at some numbers here. For the 7th year in a row, there will be a league record for 2-point field goal percentage. You never hear about this. Everything's focused on the 3.
Yeah, right.
The 3 opens up the 2.
Right.
But for the 2nd year in a row, the value of 2-point field goals is higher than 3-point field goals.
Okay, explain that for folks who may not know, like me.
Well, like let's say if you shoot 50% on a 2-pointer, that's 1 point per shot. Now they're shooting 5-4-4, so they're scoring almost 0.9 points per shot.
Okay.
The 3-pointers producing like 1.08.
Okay.
Right. So the 2 is producing more points than the 3. It's the 2nd year in a row that's happened. And the free throw percentage is at a league record pace. The number of free throws last year was the lowest free throw rate in league history. This year it's rebounded a bit. They're going to the line more. So you combine all that together, more free throws, shooting at a record pace, shooting 2s at a record pace. The 3-point shooting percentage is also up a little bit. And you have, offenses that are just rocking. And it's crazy.
Okay, now the 2-point shot, though, we should I think qualify that because when people hear 2-point shot, they think of a shot. A lot of times, this 2-point shot is a dunk. It's an alley oop. It's a lob. Let's not kid ourselves and that Richard Hamilton Part 2 has reemerged. This is all baskets that are made within 3 feet of the hoop, right? For the most part.
But there is value though in I believe, this is my theory, just watching games. My pet peeve, I'm always yelling at the screen when teams are up single digits in the final 5 minutes, 3 minutes, and they're still shooting 3s. I'm like, why? Why are you shooting a 35% shot? That's what teams, that's why Chris Paul's the master. He can sit there and run a shot clock down and extinguish it and still get the offense a good shot, including himself shooting a 15-footer and giving, rather than trying to dribble down the clock. And Killian Hayes has been struggling with this. It's not easy. You give Killian the ball up top and he's like dribbling. And then what? You got 5 left on the clock and you got to try and get a shot, right? And so many times teams are jacking up 3s, just what the other team wants. And so that is there is a value there in your DeRozan, for example, these guys that can kind of carry you in those final 5 minutes to protect leads. It's like to me, that's like the art of of the closer. They should be called closers. Guys that can close games, guys that can score 2s. Right? Instead of going on because the volatility of the 3, come on, especially when you're killing the clock for 20 seconds, you're going to put up a bad shot, So anyway, Killian Hayes is actually, kind of developing a 2-point shot, that 15-footer from the left elbow. He actually did close a couple of games that way. But so that's, one observation I have. Another observation just in general, I think this is the most parity we've seen since probably the 70s. It's anyone's, ring. Right. Don't sleep on Golden State, for God's sake. Don't sleep on Phoenix, the Clippers. In the East, there are probably, and with the trade deadline, again, who's going to get Bogdanovich, to kind of push them up into the top group, But what does that even mean, to be in the top group? There's such little difference between them and the rest of the league.
I wonder I wonder what the percentage of offensive rebounds occur on 3-point shots versus 2-point shots. Then you mentioned, I said, why are teams jacking up threes in the last 3 to 5 minutes when they've got a single-digit lead? Well, my knee-jerk reaction, no pun intended, is that maybe they're trying to salt the game away. Number one. Number two, how many times have you seen a missed 3-point shot? The rebound comes way out past in between the circles, and the team that took the shots get the rebound, get the ball back, get another 24 seconds.
It happens, it's almost like you have a sweeper that just kind of, really on both teams, you should have this. These guys, the guards, just kind of sweep through near the free throw line in case there's a long rebound. Yeah, it happens all the time, right? Produces long rebounds. But in overall, though, the offensive rebounding percentages are not high. I'd have to double check it for this year, but in recent years, it's been going down. Teams are focusing more just on getting back. You'll see a lot of teams when they shoot the three, they all just turn around and run back.
Yeah, that's true.
They don't always, stand around and see if they can get the ball back.
That's true.
Depends. Not all, sometimes. Depends on the team. Depends on their philosophy. But, it does create almost like a jump ball situation on misses. Right.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll probably the way you're portraying it, and I agree, it should be a very compelling. If you're an NBA fan and NBA observer, it's a very compelling last quarter kick here because of what you mentioned about the parity and that it's anybody's ring, and I think it should make for a very compelling playoff season. And so we'll check out that. So maybe we'll bring it back. Maybe when the season's starting to wind down a little bit, we can maybe focus a little less on the Pistons at that point, a little bit more about the playoff situation. Kind of evaluate that for us. How's that sound?
Sounds good. And just if I can add just one little point, that the nobody wants to finish 7 through 10. That's what's creating the pressure.
Yeah.
I don't think teams really care that much about finishing first in the conference anymore. It's not worth the effort. You don't have to treat every game like a Super Bowl. You lose your home court in, one day. So
right.
No one's really going for it anymore. It's almost like you accidentally get it. But nobody wants to be 7 through 10. That's for sure. And that's going to create a scramble.
Right.
But anyway, I would love to come back. And,
all right, when we're 15th, 16th through the season.
Call me, when we're 29, 30 seconds. Right? All right. So anyway, thank you very much for having me again. I always enjoy it. It's an honor. And
good stuff.
Keep your heads up, Piston fans. This is just temporary. Enjoy the rookies.
Okay. Sounds good, my friend. Good to see you again. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Take care. See you, Al.
See ya.
Take care. Bye-bye.